Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237. Come at you with another review of a Universal monster film. See if I can get through this with my nose the way it is. So I finished the Frankenstein set, so now I'm moving over to Dracula. And with this review, I'm going back to 1936 with Dracula's Daughter. This was the first sequel to the 1931 Todd Browning Bela Lugosi film, and really the only one to have any kind of continuity with it, because after this you had Son of Dracula, then you had the films I've already done, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein, which of course I saw it as part of this Legacy collection, which is part of the Universal Classic Monsters set, which if you have the money, definitely get this set. If you buy it by itself in the Legacy, you'll still get all the films and features, but that's just too nice to pass up. So anyway, Dracula's Daughter, it came out in 1936, so at that time, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, and The Invisible Man had all come out. So, in 1935, we had Bride of Frankenstein, which was Universal's first attempt at a sequel, which it was wildly successful. It was a big hit. So then they thought, oh, well, now we got to do Dracula. And this is what we got. Originally, it was intended to be titled Dracula's Guest, which was previously unpublished chapter of the Bram Stoker novel, which it later was published separately as a short story. But I guess Bram Stoker's widow caused a lot of problems, and she wanted a lot of creative control over what they were doing. So they just backed out of it and created a whole original story. The only thing giving it any sort of real continuity would be the fact that it picks up literally like 2 seconds right after the original Dracula. I mean, if you were able to put them together, Van Helsing stakes Dracula through the heart. We don't see it, it's implied. And then, like, a moment later, this film begins with 2 constables coming down the stairs. And I will say, this movie did do a great job, again, with the gothic atmosphere. Whether it be the fog outside, or like the stone spiral staircase going down to the dungeon with cobwebs everywhere. This movie is great looking. It's almost as good as the original. Of course, it is not directed by Todd Browning. It is directed by Lambert Hillier. So just that opening scene of the constables finding the bodies of Renfield and Dracula with the stake in his chest, and Van Helsing, which Van Helsing is again played by Edward Van Sloan, who played him in the previous film. Sorry. Fucking sinuses, I tell you. That's really the only thing that makes this movie really the only sequel to Dracula. The rest sort of go their own way. And so from then on, he's arrested, and then he has to sort of prove himself, but he's a very minor character. Instead, a colleague of his, can't remember the guy's name, Dr. Jeffrey Garth, played by Otto Kruger, he's a psychiatrist that specializes in much different types of psychoses. He kind of takes on his case. But there is the, I'm trying to do too many things at once. So the actual daughter, she's played by, is it Maria? Oh, Gloria Holden plays Countess Maria Zaleska. It doesn't really say if she's Dracula's biological daughter or if he turned her to a vampire and they just have that relationship. Because Van Helsing does go on to say that Dracula is over 500 years old, where the Countess is over 100. It doesn't really come out and say. She does, at points, call him my father, but... So she's played by Gloria Holden, who... One is great in the role. She has this natural, like, Black Widow kind of look. She does have a hypnotic gaze, sort of like Lugosi. And what's really interesting is, because this was 5 years after the first Dracula, she saw what happened to Lugosi. He pretty much got typecast. Even though he only played Dracula twice, in 31 and 48. But he got typecast in Dracula-type roles, whether it be as like a phantom or, you know, films like White Zombie. He's basically still playing Dracula, a Dracula-type character. She feared that would happen to her, and she did care about horror films. She didn't want to be in a horror film. So when you take that kind of a reluctance from an actress and consider her character, it worked out perfectly. Because the Countess, unlike Dracula, doesn't want to be a vampire anymore. She's looking for a cure. She longs for, you know, humanity, being able to live a normal life, see all the beautiful things that humans get to see. So, I think Gloria Holden sort of put her reluctance of the approach to the character in her performance, and I think it really helped. And so basically the film was just her and her servant, Sandor, who, he's kind of a Sandor. He's played by Irving Pitchell. If you take Lon Chaney Sr.'s Phantom of the Opera, like that parted hair, but make him played by Javier Bardem from No Country for Old Men, you get Sandor. That's what he looks like. He's just sort of this big brute of a guy that wears, like, kind of looks like the bellhop uniform, like the cylinder hat and like the straight coat. He's the one that tends to her coffin during the day and stuff like that. And also, I don't know if this is part of the humor, but whenever she talks about positive things and things of enlightenment, he's just there to shut her down. Like, there's a part where she's playing a piano and she's talking about, you know, beautiful birds singing and birds flapping their wings, and he's just sitting there all straight, and he's just like, wings of a bat. So he just brings down her happiness. They steal Dracula's body. They burn it because she thinks by destroying the body it will relieve her curse. It doesn't. So then she thinks she's just brainwashed. She thinks she's a vampire. So that's when the psychiatrist becomes involved, and that's, you know, the main course of the film. I will say, because James Whale, in especially Bride of Frankenstein, he always incorporated a lot of dark humor in his films, especially Bride of Frankenstein. So I think they were trying to emulate Whale's style of humor, but it really didn't work. I mean, the scenes with Sandor kind of being a buzzkill, that kind of worked. I don't know if that was intentional, but you do get other scenes like, I don't know if it was his girlfriend or his secretary. Character's name is Janet Blake. It's his secretary. he meets with the Countess at her place, and they sort of talk about how there's no mirrors. How come there's no mirrors? And he's waiting on a call from someone, this doctor. So she calls him, and she does like a prank call about the zoo and stuff. So he hangs up, and then when the actual guy calls, it's like this whole like, well, now you tell the people at the zoo that, and of course the guy on the other line is like, oh, well, I never. There's a lot of dumb humor like that. That didn't really work. Hell, there's even stuff in Bride of Frankenstein, which I find to be a perfect movie that I don't think works. Like, when Una O'Connor sees the monster for the first time, she does like that. Whoa. But yeah. And I guess the other thing that's worth mentioning is Countess Maria Zaleska. This has been talked about ever since 1936. It's implied that she is the first lesbian vampire. Which, the only thing to back this up would be there's a scene where it's nighttime, she's looking for a victim, she sends out Sandor, and he sees this young woman. I'm sorry if I sound terrible, my nose is just so stuffed up right now. I'm trying not to blow my nose and sniff all the time. Can't do anything about it. But anyway, she's kind of has the guise of an artist. And so Sandor says, hey, we got warmth and food and money if you come pose for, my employer. So she does, and the Countess tells her she's doing this piece about the face and shoulders of female youth. So, and she does this hypnotic thing where she just kind of takes the straps off, and I think there's hints of like eroticism through it, but really, the woman that posing is really like reluctant. She doesn't want to do it, but you can tell she gets panicky. Of course, then she's attacked. That's really the only thing to really kind of back up the lesbian theory. All I would say is that it just creates tension. Because she does go after male victims too. Like, the social elite kind of, Victorian teddy boys. She goes after a couple of them. But, sorry, I was reading up on something. Do I think she's a lesbian? No. I get the implications. I'm not against it. If they came out and said, Countess Maria Zaleska is a lesbian vampire, fact, it wouldn't bother me. Because it doesn't feel like that's the agenda of the film like it would be today. But, I think, so she wants to cure herself, and Sandor wants eternal life. That's sort of their relationship. And it sort of has a similar ending. But only she's shot through the heart with an arrow by Sandor because she broke her promise. And apparently Van Helsing got people to believe him, because then Sandor is shot by Scotland Yardsman. So So that's Dracula's daughter. Also, unlike Dracula, this film did have a score, and I actually really like the score. It fits perfectly. I know at this time, some films, because it was kind of a new concept to have talkies and score, which I guess there's a score option for the original Dracula, and I guess it's kind of bombastic and overbearing. I choose to watch it the regular way. I mean, the for the only time when you get to see Dracula is in the beginning with the stake in his chest. It's just a wax bust of Bela Lugosi. For a sequel to a, no pun intended, monstrously huge horror film, to have the title Dracula but not have Dracula in it at all, and instead be about a character that we're just now being introduced to, this probably is as good as it would have got. I thought it was entertaining. I thought she did a fantastic job with the role. You know, there are scenes like where she has to do the hypnotic stare, and I mean, her eyes are perfect for it. It still had the same gothic atmosphere as the original. I mean, obviously, anyone watching is going to miss the presence of Lugosi, but I thought Gloria Holden did the best job she could, and I consider it a worthy sequel. There really only is 2 more films from this series that I would do, because each one of these has, you know, whenever a monster's in, like, this one also has House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein, which was on the Frankenstein set. So I've already done those. So the only other ones I have to do would be Son of Dracula and the 1931 Spanish version. So I'll be doing those next. But I also really do want to check out that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that I got. But anyway. So with that, this has been 1936's Dracula's Daughter. I hope I didn't sound too terrible, guys. Again, I apologize. But anyway, if you stuck through it, thank you for watching.